Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another video. It is Tuesday night, quite late on Tuesday night. We don't usually upload on a Tuesday, but I thought we'd sit down tonight and talk about the recent news regarding football fans being allowed back into football stadiums from the 2nd of December when the nationwide lockdown ends in some areas. Now, this news was broken yesterday. We talked about it briefly at the start of yesterday's live stream. It was broken by BBC, and they stated that some fans will be allowed to revisit football stadiums after the national lockdown ends on the 2nd of December. It'll work in coordination with the tiers, and if you are living in an area that is under tier 1 restrictions, which is the lowest level of restriction, then 4,000 fans will be allowed in stadiums to watch live sporting events such as football in those areas. If you were in a tier 2 area, an area under tier 2 restrictions, which is the middle level of restriction, then 2,000 fans will be allowed in those stadiums, and if you're in tier 3, you'll have no fans allowed in the stadium. So it's a massive bit of information, a massive jump. The BBC first reported it, and then of course a lot of other journalists and a lot of other media outlets jumped on it straight away. And it's something initially that I read and I thought, that seems a little bit of a rushed decision, considering we're still in a nationwide lockdown, considering we haven't come out of that nationwide lockdown yet. It did seem at the time like a little bit of a rushed decision to think, well, hang on, 2 or 3 weeks ago, you were telling us that all the restaurants are shutting, all the bars are shutting, all the pubs are shutting, you can't go out and see your family, you can't go out and see your friends, and within a couple of weeks, and don't get me wrong, I haven't kept up to date with the infection rate and all of that sort of stuff because I don't really watch the news, but within a couple of weeks, we've not only gone from saying, right, okay, we can now afford to come out of the national lockdown and open things up again gradually, we've come out and said, and some areas can start going back into football stadiums as well. If you'd have said to me 2 or 3 weeks ago, listen, Cam, when do you think we'll be allowed back at Goodison Park in any capacity? I'd have said early next year at the absolute earliest. But obviously now, depending on which restriction level Merseyside fall under, we could see Everton back at Goodison Park live with our very own eyes by I think it's the 14th or the 15th of December, which is the first home game after the national restrictions and the national lockdown ends on the 2nd of December. Now, this, of course, like I said, does depend on the restrictions of your area. If you're under tier 1 restrictions, 4,000 fans will be allowed in the stadium. Under tier 2 restrictions, 2,000 fans will be allowed in the stadium. And if you're under tier 3 restrictions, there'll be no fans allowed in the stadium and no sporting events. And those restrictions also vary for different things. Restaurants and bars opening, people being allowed to stay and meet outdoors and stay overnight and stuff. It, of course, all depends on the tier in which your region is placed under after the nationwide lockdown ends on the 2nd of December. So this, I think, was a big surprise for a lot of us, is the fact that, we'll be able to go back, or hopefully we'll be able to go back to watch our football teams live in the flesh in some form within the next, few weeks or so, certainly within the next month. It mightn't be Everton because we don't know where Merseyside is going to be placed. Merseyside was placed in tier 3 restrictions before the national lockdown, but of course since then we've had the mass testing here. Our infection rates have dropped massively, I believe, so Merseyside may well be looking for a tier 2 or potentially even tier 1 restriction level, which of course would mean that we would be allowed to go back to Goodison Park. Now, Everton did tweet out today that they have decided to go with that, with the government's advice, and depending on the restrictions and where Merseyside is placed, Everton will be welcoming fans back into the stadiums if they are able to do so. They released an entire statement on this, which read that the way that in which fans will be chosen is through a balloting system. That balloting system will be made available for season ticket holders and hospitality members only. So unfortunately, if you haven't got a season ticket or you're not a hospitality member, then you're probably still going to have to wait a little bit longer to watch Everton at Goodison Park. But if you are a season ticket holder like myself or a hospitality member, then your name of your group, I believe it is, your family group, will be put in a sort of digital hat, I suppose, and a ballot will be taken for who can go to Goodison Park on the given date. So there's a lot of information to get through. I want to read the entire article that Everton put out just so we can cover it all. So they said that the ballot will only be open to season ticket and hospitality members with the aim of keeping family and friends groups together where possible. Fans will have to opt in for the ballot. And they also said that full details for the ballot process will be available and shared on evertonfc.com and via email to fans following the government's tier announcement on Thursday. So this all of course does depend on where Merseyside is placed in terms of tier 1, 2 or 3 on Thursday, which is when the national lockdown will end. I think it's next Thursday. And if we're in tier 3, then none of this really matters because we won't be able to have any fans in the stadium. But as much as it probably is likely we'll go into tier 3 because we were in tier 3 before that, and let's be honest, this government doesn't really like this area and this region of the country. However, given the mass testing, given the drop in infection rates, it is very possible that we could be placed in tier 1 or 2, which would of course mean we would be able to welcome fans to Goodison Park in some form of capacity. But anyway, Everton went on to say tier 1 will allow a maximum of 4,000 fans to attend and tier 2 a maximum of 2,000 fans. The club's objective is to enable as many fans as possible to attend games whilst prioritising the health and safety of fans and staff. To support this process and to help ensure season ticket members can attend matches with family and friends, the club is asking all fans to check their personal details and contact information stored with the club, which can also be accessed on evertonfc.com. It is important this information is up to date as it will ensure the ballot process and distribution of tickets runs smoothly. Any season ticket members who do not wish to enter the ballot or are unsuccessful in a ballot will continue to receive a pro rata refund for each game not attended. So if you decide that you don't want to go back to Goodison Park for any particular reason, we're going to talk about those in a second, or your name isn't picked out of the hat, you will still receive a full refund for that game that you missed. So of course there's a lot of questions. Initially you're sort of thinking, right, okay, this is something that we've all been asking for. This is something that we've all been waiting for quite a long time now. Fans being back at the stadium, fans being able to go back to watch our teams live. And I thought this was really, really interesting when this news come out yesterday because it's not the ideal situation, is it? Let's be honest. It's not how we would all like to be going to watch Everton on a Saturday afternoon. Ideally, we'd want to be bouncing down to Goodison Park with 40,000 Evertonians singing, shouting, screaming, supporting the team, having a beer before the game, having a beer, sort of in the stands before you go up to your seat, going down at half time. It's not going to be like that whatsoever. There's going to be a maximum of 4,000 fans. They haven't announced yet whether those 4,000 fans will be spread across the 4 different stands at Goodison Park. I'm assuming so. And it may even be 2,000 fans, of course, if we are placed into tier 2. So it's not going to be how we know and love Everton Football Club and how we know what we've become used to and what we've, absolutely adored over however long you've supported Everton. For me, it's 22 years. For you, it might be 40, it might be 50. Let me know in the comments how long you've loved Everton Football Club. Might be showing your age a little bit, and how long you've loved going to Goodison Park. It, of course, won't be in that same capacity. Is it better than nothing? For me, it is better than nothing. However, I have seen a lot of Evertonians say, well, look, if it's not 40,000 of us bouncing down City Road on a Saturday afternoon or getting down County Road and having a beer before the game and then screaming our heart out to Goodison Park, then I don't want to be in there. And that's absolutely fine. And everybody is entitled to their own opinion and everybody is entitled to their own reasoning for having that opinion. One thing I would say is if you are an Evertonian that doesn't want to visit Goodison Park until we're all allowed back in and it's back to that normality that we know and that we knew before the pandemic hit, then you probably are going to be waiting quite a sufficient amount of time, because I honestly don't see a point in the near future where there's 40,000 Evertonians in Goodison Park in the same capacity as there was this time last year. I just don't see it anytime in the future. The fact that we can go in some capacity is a step forward. The fact that Everton have come out with clear plans literally less than 24 hours after the government said that, there's a potential possibility that certain football clubs will be able to host fans, from the middle of December. The fact that Everton have come out and clearly detailed a way in which this would happen, a way in which these fans will be chosen, shows that there's that organisation behind it. And I'm really, really happy with that, because one worry I had last night when this news got leaked, when this news got put out there and when the government announced this, is one thing I thought is, well, has this been discussed with the football clubs? Has this been mentioned to the football clubs? Or are we now going to get 20 Premier League football clubs rushing around to try and make plans as to how they can accommodate for 4,000 or 2,000 fans coming in and visiting their stadium to watch football games every single week? Is it now going to be a case of, right, okay, we pick a certain amount of fans through a ballot like Everton are doing, or we go with season season ticket holders as a priority, or we go with hospitality members as a priority, or we open it to everybody and ask people to put their names in the hat online, and then if you get picked out, you can buy a ticket. How is that going to work? And look, Everton have come out, and I dare say Everton have had these plans, in the background for a long, long time, just waiting for that information to be given from the government, which is, a really, really good thing. But one thing that also come out late last night and has also sort of spread into today and got a lot of people talking on social media is that it was the Mail Online that put it out initially. And look, the Mail Online aren't the most reliable source, and I'd usually take whatever they say with a ton of salt, never mind a pinch of salt. Sky Sports also followed this story along, and I think it's actually a quite realistic story, to be honest. It's nothing out of the blue, and they put out a story that said when fans return to Premier League grounds over the next few weeks or so, next month or so after the national lockdown ends, it could be a case of that fans are banned from shouting, banned from singing, and also banned from consuming alcohol at football stadiums. Now, this really did cause up a stir, because this caused a lot of people to say, well, what's the point? What's the point in going and watching your football team if you've got to sit there and practically just be there? You can breathe, but you can't do much else. Can you get up? Can you celebrate? You can't shout, you can't scream, you can't sing. Now, don't get me wrong, I had a little think about this, and as much as I thought, well, that's not really going the match, is it? Let's be honest, it's not really going the match anyway, because the likelihood is you and your dad or your brother or your friend or whoever you sit next to are more than likely going to be sitting a long, long way away from anybody else in the stadium. So it's not going to be like what we know and love about going the match anyway. But it really doesn't sit well with me that we may have to sit at Goodison Park watching Everton, expressing very, very little emotion. I was thinking about this and I've thought about this all day, hence why this video is going out really, really late. But I've been having a real think about this, and, I was trying to put myself in certain scenarios. I was trying to put myself in certain situations. Look, could I sit there and watch Everton for 90 minutes without screaming, without shouting, without singing, without consuming a pint of beer? Probably, yeah. But put yourself in certain situations. Everton play Manchester United in the Carabao Cup quarter-final 2 days before Christmas. Let's say 4,000 fans, if we are placed in Tier 1, get pulled out of the hat to go and watch that game live at Goodison Park. Dominic Calvert-Lewin scores a winner in the last 5 minutes, last 30 seconds, whatever you want to say, to put us into the semi-final of a Carabao Cup. It's going to be very, very difficult for the fans in that stadium to not show emotion, and some fans might sit back and go, well, I'd rather be at home where I can scream, I can shout, I can have a beer, I can, throw my fist in the air, I can jump up, I can have as good of a time as I possibly can, than be at Goodison Park and have to hold that emotion in because I'm at the stadium. Now, there's nothing that said you can't celebrate, there's nothing that said you can't jump up, etc. But I just had a feeling that if fans are going to be returning to football grounds, I just think it's going to be very, very strict, and a part of those strict rules will basically mean you're there to watch the match and not really engage in the match, which is what we're all, of course, used to. So I was really, really interested to see what fans thought about this. I've seen, a number of fans saying, I snap your hand off for it, I want to go back to Goodison, I don't care in what capacity it is, I just want to go back to watch Everton. And I've seen other fans saying, no, I'm not really interested in that, I want to go back when we're all back together. I want to go back when there's 40,000 of us screaming and shouting, and we can start singing and we can sing Richarlison's song, etc. So I put a little poll out on our Twitter, and I basically said, look, if Everton are given the opportunity through, if we're placed in Tier 1 or 2 restrictions after the national lockdown, and Everton say, look, we're going to allow a certain amount of fans into the stadium, if your name or your family was picked out of that hat, would you go to the match, or would you rather not go until we can all go? Sort of a everyone or no one mentality. And 74% of people out of 153 votes at the time of taking this information off. The poll is still on our channel, by the way. You can on our Twitter, at MightyBluesYT. It's up there in the top left-hand corner. You can go and follow that. You can go and get involved with the poll. It'll be up probably till about lunchtime tomorrow. But out of 153 votes, 74% of people said yes, they'd go to Goodison Park, and 26% of people said no, they wouldn't go to Goodison Park. And there was a few people that actually put their concerns in, and their points as to why they would or wouldn't go to the ground. Look, a lot of people said, listen, if we can go to Goodison, if I can watch the game at home and it's going to be the same as watching the game at the ground, I'd rather go and watch the game at the ground. And that's fair enough. And look, I probably am sitting on that side at the moment, whereas if my name was pulled out of the ballot, or me and my dad's name were pulled out of the ballot, I'd like to go to Goodison Park this season and watch Everton Football Club. I really, really would. Imagine being able to grow up and, say, I managed to go to Goodison Park to watch a Premier League game, where there was only 2,000 of us there or 4,000 of us there, as well as just craving going back to Goodison to watch Everton. I haven't been at Goodison since the Goodison Park sleepout, which was in March. We haven't watched a live game at Goodison Park since the Manchester United game where Dominic Calvert-Lewin's goal got disallowed. It feels like an absolute eternity ago. So I would be one of those fans going to Goodison Park if I got the opportunity to, but I understand the reasons behind some people not wanting to go, and there is a couple of them, and I want to get into talking about them in a second. One reason that was brought to my attention by somebody on Twitter who brought up a really, really good point is, what about travelling fans coming into the city? There's a lot of season ticket holders at Everton Football Club who don't live within the city of Liverpool. There is the season ticket holders that live outside of Liverpool, be it Cheshire, be it Manchester, be it Birmingham, and be it anywhere across the country. There's a lot of fans that travel from out of the country, from out of the city, into the city to watch Everton every single week. There's a lot of fans that wake up at 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, travel to Goodison Park, leave, get home at 8 o'clock at night, and they do that every single week. They're very, very dedicated. What happens with those fans if those fans' names are picked out of that ballot, if they opt in to be picked out of that ballot? What happens if Everton say, right, okay, the Smith family have been picked out, but they're travelling from Wiston, and Wiston's restrictions are tier 3, so they can't travel out of Wiston because it's unessential travel to go and watch a football match? What then happens to their ticket? You're then really, really hoping on the fact that the Smith family turn around and go, you know what, I completely understand that, that's fine. They mightn't do that. They might turn around and go, well, hang on, how is that fair? I've paid for my season ticket, I've opted in, I've been given the chance to go, and now you're telling me because of my restrictions elsewhere I can't go? Is it just going to be a case of saying, look, if you live within the city, these are our restrictions, this is our tier, so if you're picked out and you've opted in, then you can go. If you live outside of the city, we can't guarantee you'll be able to go because you may be under different restrictions. If that's the case, Everton and every other football club, by the way, this is about all football clubs, not just about Everton. Everton need to make that absolutely clear going into this, is that, look, if you're going to say, right, okay, Merseyside, let's say, for example, is placed on a tier 1 level of restriction, brilliant, fine, 4,000 fans can potentially go to Goodison Park, here's how you're opt in. If you're going to do that, you also have to say, but please be aware that if you live outside of Merseyside and your region is within another level of restriction that may prohibit you travelling, then we can't guarantee you'll be able to come to the match and have a ticket ultimately, because then that would be going against the rules. And that, like I said, that doesn't just work for Everton, that works for every football club a lot, across the country. You might have an Arsenal fan that lives in Liverpool, you might have a Crystal Palace fan that lives in Birmingham. Season ticket holder, that lives in Birmingham. It works for everybody. This is something I think universally that the clubs are going to have to come together and discuss, and I honestly think a meeting between all of the clubs prior to the 2nd of December when these plans come into place will be very, very welcome, because they'll all be able to sit down and go, listen, we need to get X, Y and Z right, and we need to work together doing X, Y and Z, otherwise this could go very, very wrong. So that's a really, really good point. And the lady I was speaking to on Twitter said, look, I'm a fan that if I was able to go, it would be unnecessary for me to travel all that way to go and watch Everton at Goodison Park, so I'd be happy to give my ticket out to a local fan or somebody that lives within the area that will be able to make it a lot easier and make it home a lot easier. And that's great, and that's brilliant of her to do so, and it's very, very kind of her to do, but I can't help but feel like that wouldn't be the case for everybody, and that not everybody would have that same mentality. Another thing is, would fans be happy for other fans, sort of getting a ticket and being able to go? Would it cause toxicity within a fan base? Now, I don't think Everton have much of a problem with this, to be honest with you. I think if you're an Everton fan and you're on social media and your name gets pulled out of the ballot, if we are able to have fans at Goodison Park, and you say, oh, brilliant, I can go to Goodison on Saturday, boss, I think most fans will say, well done, enjoy it, have a nice day, enjoy your day, hopefully we get the 3 points. I don't think Everton as a football club will have a big problem with that. However, other football clubs, I think, might. other season ticket holders of other football clubs may become jealous. They may feel like, why haven't I been pulled out? Why is that fair? Why has that happened in the way it's done? And it may just cause unnecessary toxicity. And I'm not, these are sort of points that would make you feel like I'm against fans being back in football stadiums. I'm not against fans being back in football stadiums. If it can happen, I think it should happen, and it is a step in the right direction. But I'm trying to make the point of that it absolutely has to happen properly, and this has to happen. Every football club has to work together doing this, otherwise it could go very, very wrong. And like I said, don't know if anybody else feels this way, but for me it really does feel like it was just sort of thrown out there. 3 weeks ago we were told, you know, we're going back into a national lockdown, the infection rates are increasing, things aren't getting better, the shops are shutting, who knows whether we'll be able to have Christmas with our families, and 2 or 3 weeks later we're sitting here and you're saying, oh yeah, you can go back to football grounds within the next 2 weeks or so, which is mad. And it's from the 2nd of December when the national lockdown ends. If you're in tier 1 or 2, you'll be able to have fans in your stadium in some form of capacity, which is quite mad. I think Everton have said the home fixture against Chelsea, which is in mid-December, will be the first game that will welcome fans back to Goodison Park if we are placed in a tier that allows that to happen. So that's another thing. Like I said, will fans be happy for other fans? And as well, I want to know, again, I'm putting this out to everybody watching this video, it's not just a Twitter exclusive thing. If your name gets pulled out of that ballot, if your name gets pulled out of that hat, will you be going to Goodison Park? Will you be interested in going to Goodison Park to watch Everton? Have you got any issues with going? For example, the fact that you will be obviously one of maybe 2,000, maybe 4,000 people. You'll probably have to wear a mask. You mightn't be able to shout. You mightn't be able to sing. You mightn't be able to consume alcohol. Are you a fan that doesn't want to risk the health implications that could potentially happen by going to the match? Don't get me wrong, going to a football match and sitting in an outside stadium however many meters away from the next person is probably a lot safer than going to the supermarket, but there is still some fans that won't want to take that risk, in the same way as there's still people that haven't taken that risk to go out and do some things that other people have done because of worries about their health. So listen, it's really, really interesting, and ultimately it is good news, and ultimately it is a step in the right direction. But for me, it has to be done right, and there has to be a structure, and there has to be clear plans in place from each football club to make sure this happens smoothly. What happens if your name gets pulled out the ballot one week, and then luckily your name gets pulled out the ballot the next week as well? Do you then get a phone call saying, well, look, you went last week, so, you know, we're going to give it to someone else? Or have you got the right to say, well, hang on, I've paid for my season ticket either way, I've been pulled out again, so I'm going again? You know, what happens if, again, another thing that is very, very unlikely, but there's still a potential, what happens if you know, your name, let's say, gets pulled out of a ballot, or your family name in Everton's case gets pulled out of a ballot, and then the two people that sit next to you, their name gets pulled out of the same ballot? What happens then? You're then sitting next to each other, you're two different households, you're mixing. Do one of you get asked to move? If so, could you then say, well, hang on, I've been moved, so I'm not paying for the ticket that I'm not sitting in the seat that I've originally paid for? Will you be moved? Will fans still be sitting in their own seats come the return of Goodison Park, or will you just turn up on the day and be allocated a seat? If so, what happens if you're a Park End season ticket holder with a fantastic view of the ground, and you get moved to a part of the stadium where you may have a not so great of a view, or you may have a restricted view? Can you then go back to the club and say, I'd like a refund on the difference between that ticket and the ticket that I actually paid for in my season ticket? There's a lot of questions, and again, this might seem like I'm against it. I'm not. I think it's a step in the right direction, and I think if football fans can return to football stadiums in a safe capacity, then we absolutely should be doing it. And I am one of those fans that, if given the opportunity and it's safe to do so, I'll be returning to Goodison Park. I'll be going back. I'll be wanting to watch Everton. Yes, it's not ideal. Yes, I'd love to be going with 40,000 Evertonians singing and screaming me heart out. Yes, it will be very annoying if Dominic Calvert-Lewin scores a last-minute winner against Manchester United and I can't sing or scream or shout or whatever. But ultimately, I want to go and watch Everton at Goodison Park, because I want to go and watch Everton at Goodison Park anyway, and it's absolutely killed me not being able to do so. But I know there's some fans that aren't of that same feeling, and I know there's some fans that are very much saying, well, if it's not us all, then I don't want to go. I'd rather sit at home. If I'm going to be told that I've got to sit there wearing a mask, or that I can't shout, or that I can't drink, or that I've got to basically go in, sit down, not move, leave, then I'd rather sit in the comfort of my own house and watch it where I'm free to do whatever I want. But listen, it's a really, really interesting topic. Let me know. Look, by the results of that poll, 74% of people said that they'd go back to Goodison Park. So I assume the majority of people, if given the opportunity, would return to football stadiums, even if it does mean certain strict restrictions. But I want to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Like I said, I'm for it. I think it's a step in the right direction, and I think it's a realistic step as well, because if Everton or any other football club said, look, we're not going to allow fans back into the stadium, or if the government, let's say, said we're not going to allow fans back into the stadium until every single fan can go back in to make it as fair as possible, then we'd probably be waiting until 2021, 2022, and there would even be a fear for me as an Evertonian that we may never watch Everton at Goodison Park again, because I honestly don't know if within the next 3 years we'll see 40,000 people sat at Goodison Park in the same capacity as we have for the last 22 years of my life. So ultimately, this is a step in the right direction, but the point of this video and the point of me bringing everything up was it has to be done properly. It has to be done correctly. And listen, Everton notoriously over the years cock up a Carabao Cup second round fixture against Fleetwood Town at Goodison Park. You've got people queuing up outside and, you know, moaning about being able to get in and not being able to get in. So it absolutely has to be done. It absolutely has to be managed correctly, and it has to be as fair as possible for fans coming into the city. If they aren't able to go because of certain restrictions, you have to make that clear to them. For fans that are living in the city, if they are able to go, what happens if their name gets picked out 2 weeks on the run? This has to be set out to everybody and explained to everybody so we all know where we are. And ultimately, I assume that the club will be planning to do that after the announcement from the government as to where Merseyside sits in the tier selection come the end of the national lockdown within the next couple of weeks or so. But that is the big news, is that the BBC reported yesterday, and it has been confirmed by the government, that fans will be allowed to return to football stadiums in some capacity from after the 2nd of December. Those regions placed in Tier 1 restrictions will be allowed 4,000 fans, and those regions placed in Tier 2 restrictions will be allowed 2,000 fans. If you're placed in Tier 3 restrictions, then forget it for the moment. Of course, those restrictions could change within a week or 2 weeks, so, you know, that might change. It's not saying if you're in Tier 3, completely forget it, because you'll never go back to the stadium. It may change, but for the moment, unfortunately, you won't be able to go. So, look, we'll see where Merseyside is. We'll obviously be keeping up to date. We'll obviously be doing another video when the restrictions for Merseyside are announced, and we can talk about whether or not we'll be able to go back to Goodison Park. And I assume that the club will be also putting that information out there and discussing a little bit more in depth how it's going to work. But there you go. Listen, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I dare say we're all, or most of us, are probably in the same boat as me. Listen, I can't wait to get back to Goodison Park. It's not going to be like going the game is usually, but ultimately watching the game on the telly isn't like going the game usually. I was watching Ben Foster's YouTube channel today, a little bit off topic, but I've been watching Ben Foster's YouTube channel recently. I think it's really, really entertaining. It's called Cycling Goalkeeper, or Cycling GK, and what he does is he basically films every game that he plays in by putting the GoPro behind the goal to film his saves, and he's walking off the pitch at half time with the GoPro, and they were actually playing the fake crowd noise through the speakers in the ground. And he was like, how weird's this fake crowd noise through the speakers? I thought that was just something they done on the television to try and make it feel better while you're watching at home, but it's not. It's something that they're now doing in games to make the footballers believe there's fans in the stadium, even though they can see there's not. It's weird. So, listen, would you rather be at home watching fake crowd noise on the telly, or be at Goodison Park, you know, not being able to do what you usually can do, but at least you're watching the game live in front of your eyes, and look, at least we'll be able to watch James Rodriguez in an Everton shirt. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Is it a positive thing for you? Is it something that we should have waited on? Do you feel like the decision's been a little bit rushed, or maybe we just haven't been kept in the loop enough as we should have been, or as we would have liked to have been, should I say? Let me know where you stand personally. Will you be going back to Goodison Park if given the opportunity? Do you think that this should have been open to every fan and not just season ticket holders and members, hospitality members? Let me know. Anyway, that is it for this video. If you have enjoyed it, please do hit that like button. It does only take a second. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe as well. We will be back tomorrow at 5:15 p.m. with another live stream. We're going to be joined by Gortz, and we're going to be talking about Marcel Brands and his contract and his future at Everton as well. So let me know what you think about that, and get involved 5:15 p.m. In that live stream as well. Should be a really, really interesting one. Big thanks for watching. Please do hit that like button if you have enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you soon on the Mighty Blues.